Who decides that someone is a journalist? Well, for most of the past century, that question answered itself. If you worked for a newspaper or a broadcaster, you were a journalist. That's changed. Independent reporters, podcasters, people with a camera and an audience, they're doing the same work now. The gatekeepers haven't caught up, though. A small number of institutions still make that call. Accreditation committees decide who gets into a debate hall. Police decide in the moment at the edge of a protest who counts as press. Take federal election debates. The body that runs them has denied accreditation to independent reporters more than once. The federal courts stepped in and ruled that the process wasn't fair. A public body got this wrong again and again and had to be ordered by a court to fix it. In one of those cases, the commission admitted something in its own court filings. It hadn't even published its criteria. It made the rules up as it went. Then it applied them behind closed doors. It gets worse when journalists are in the field. In 2021, police arrested photojournalist Amber Bracken while she covered the RCMP enforcing a court injunction. She had press ID, she had a letter of assignment, the RCMP knew in advance that she would be there. None of it mattered. The RCMP's position, still being argued in the courts this year, is that she wasn't doing legitimate journalism, full stop. Years earlier, journalist Justin Brake fought criminal and civil charges for 4 years after covering a protest. The charges were dropped. The court ruled in his favor. Different journalist, different decade. Same unresolved question, and it took him 4 years to get an answer after paying for all of those legal fees. The debates haven't caught up either. At last year's federal leaders debate, organizers accredited independent outlets under the same court-ordered process that they'd already been forced into twice before. Then they canceled the post-debate scrum after tensions in the media room. Different election, same fight. Here's the part that should bother you the most. Look at who's actually getting caught by this. It's not the reporters filing friendly questions at a scheduled press conference. It's the ones covering protests from the inside. It's the ones digging into a story where an institution does not want to answer questions. The ones with no existing relationship to protect. A free press is supposed to ask those in power the tough questions they don't want asked. It can't do that job if those in power get to decide who counts as press and effectively remove those most willing to ask tough questions. So what fixes this? A few things, none of them complicated. First, publish accreditation criteria before the event, not behind closed doors, not having to make up a defense in the court after you've been caught. Every case here traces back to a committee with no public rules, or one that didn't follow the rules that it had. Publishing the standard in advance costs nothing, and it ends most of these fights before they start. Second, give police a real protocol for recognizing press in the field. Clear standards, training on what counts as doing journalism, and real consequences when an officer gets it wrong. Right now, the only consequence for a wrongful arrest is a lawsuit that takes years to resolve and paid for by the journalist, not the officer. That has to change if the standard is going to mean anything on the street, not just in a courtroom transcript. Third, and this ties the other two together, write a statutory definition of journalist into law. Base it on the work someone is doing and not who signs their paycheck. One definition applied the same way by every accreditation committee and every police force. So no one has to spend 4 years in court proving after the fact that they were doing their job. This wouldn't hand out press credentials to anyone who asks. It replaces case-by-case discretion with a standard fixed in law. The same test applied the same way, whether it's a committee or a debate hall or an officer at the edge of a protest. A free press only means something if the toughest questions are still getting asked. Right now, the system deciding who's allowed to ask them is inconsistent. It's discretionary. And case after case, it's landing on the people courageous enough to ask those tough questions. Fix the definition, and you're not just protecting a handful of reporters who've had to fight for it in the courts. You're protecting whoever asks the next hard question before anyone decides in advance whether they're allowed to. What would that mean for society? It would mean we receive more than carefully managed reports that avoid uncomfortable truths. We'd hear what is actually happening, who's responsible, and what those in the positions of power would rather keep out of public view. Yet we seem to be moving in the opposite direction. Governments increasingly speak to combating misinformation and disinformation, often claiming concern that their actions are being misunderstood and misrepresented. The result is a legal and regulatory environment that encourages caution over courage. With each new bill that expands uncertainty or liability, more journalists and media organizations are incentivized to look away from controversial stories rather than risk the legal consequences. A truly free press is one of the primary checks on government power. It exists to ensure governments remain accountable to the people, not to shield governments from scrutiny or allow them to dictate what the public is permitted to know. Our hope is that freedom-minded leaders will recognize the need for meaningful reform, publish transparent accreditation criteria, establish clear protocols for police to recognize legitimate journalists in the field, and enact a statutory definition of journalist that protects the work that's being done rather than the institution doing it. As for Freedom's Advocate, we'll continue working alongside our strategic partners to identify and support constitutional cases that clarify and strengthen these fundamental freedoms. By establishing strong legal precedents, we can help ensure governments and public institutions remain bound to the guarantees of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Please like and share this video with others, and let us know what you think in the comments below. You've been watching Anchor Point. I'm Randy Crossan. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.